Selling as a founder will actually get you most often your highest return on investment. Every once in a while, there's a project. Let's say like if you can systematize this, it's going to save your team X dollars consistently month over month. That particular project I can justify, but in general, it's always the selling because nobody can sell the way you can.
Welcome to the Prosperity Playground, the podcast where business meets energetics, strategy meets soul, and prosperity becomes inevitable. I'm your host, Anna Lozano, mom, founder, investor, mentor, and energetics in business expert. This is your weekly activation to rewire how you think and feel about wealth, success, and personal power, because it's not about working harder, it's about regulating deeper, aligning stronger, and receiving wider. You don't hustle for your future, you calibrate to your higher self. Join me weekly for high-level conversations with the world's most inspiring entrepreneurs, creators, and thought leaders. True prosperity isn't just about money. It's about alignment, freedom, expansion, and embodying your worth. Welcome to the playground. Let's build your most prosperous life. Welcome back to the Prosperity Playground podcast. Today's episode is a special one for me because I get to welcome not only an incredible expert, but also someone who is part of my own story as an entrepreneur. Staci Millard is the investor who purchased a Love Powered Co. in 2022. She is a seasoned pro in finance and business growth with a rich background that includes over 15 years of experience in accounting. She's not just an accountant, she built her first $1 million business from scratch while juggling the joys and challenges of motherhood. After earning her stripes as a CPA, Staci shifted her focus to where her heart truly lies, mentoring thousands of entrepreneurs to find their path to financial success and business scalability. Her real-world experience from managing books to navigating the highs and lows of entrepreneurship makes her an invaluable mentor for small businesses. Now leading Thrive Accounting, Staci zeroes in on helping businesses get their finances straight and poised for growth. Her blend of accounting know-how and entrepreneurial spirit offers a roadmap to thriving in business. In today's episode, we dive into numbers because numbers tell a story, and Staci breaks down exactly which numbers to track depending on where you are on your journey. Profit equals freedom. It's not just about making more money. Staci walks us through how to actually keep more, and we dive into the importance of paying yourself as a founder. This conversation is strategy meets soul at its best. Whether you're just starting out or you're in growth mode, you're going to walk away from this episode not only feeling more confident with your numbers, but also excited about what they can reveal for your business and your growth. I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's dive in. Staci Millard, welcome to the Prosperity Playground podcast. I am so grateful you're here.
Oh, I'm so excited, Anna.
Oh, girl, I was just telling you before we click record, like numbers. Oh, I'm not a numbers girl. So I'm like, I need to have you on the show so that we really dive into the numbers, because at the end of the day, this is why we own businesses. Yes, for impact. Yes, for all the soulful reasons, but we need to make money. We need to have our numbers in check when building these businesses. So I'm really pumped for this conversation.
Okay, but this is so important because people always think like, oh, it's just the numbers, right? It's almost like we're leaving everything else behind, and it absolutely isn't. They really have to interact. And so when we're only focused on maybe the energy of it and not looking at the numbers, there's always something that's missing. Like you're always looking for the next thing because you're like, it's not falling into place. But the same happens for anybody who's just very systems driven and isn't looking at energy. It also doesn't fall into place. Like they play together. So
goosebumps. Yeah. Yes, this is what the show is all about, like the strategy and the soul. Oh, seriously, like look at my goosebumps. I'm like, this is going to be such a good conversation. So I'm going to set the stage because we are speaking to both newer founders and seasoned founders, but both in growth mode. So when I specifically refer the question to early stage founders, these are businesses in about years 1 to 3. They have an annual revenue range about 50K to 250K. Characteristics: they're solidifying their scalable product or offer, likely reinvesting every dollar back into the business. They might have scrappy do-it-yourself energy, wearing all the hats, avoiding the numbers out of overwhelm, and often lacking financial systems in place. And their goal is consistent revenue months, paying themselves something, and having more confidence as the founder in their numbers. And then seasoned founders, these are founders in years 3 to 7 plus of business. Their annual range of revenue is $250K to about $2 million plus. Their characteristics is proven business model and audience, steady revenue streams, focused on scaling without burnout, like really moving from that operator to CEO energy. They're ready to optimize profitability, not just revenue. They're thinking about the investments that they should make that are going to generate the most profit, and saving on taxes, doing it legally, that conversation. And they're funding bigger visions right now. So how does that sound as we identify both avatars that we're speaking to in this conversation?
You nailed it. Like every accountant really should just hand that to their marketing team.
I love it. Well, yes, exactly. The marketing brain of mine was activated writing that down. So, okay, we're going to dive into numbers telling a story. So why founders, whether just starting out or already in growth mode, can't afford to ignore their numbers. Staci, why are the numbers so key, even if we're more marketers, even if our zone of genius is more, creativity and sales and all the quote unquote fun stuff? Why can we not afford to ignore the numbers?
Yeah. So I think the number one thing for founders is that no matter how heart-led you are, money is an energetic exchange.
Yeah.
And so when you are ignoring the numbers, you are ignoring whether the exchange that you're going through with your business and that your business is going through with its customers, whether it's really acting the way that you want it to. Is it feeling the same for everybody involved? And the numbers tell that story, right? So no different than looking at your marketing. And does this resonate with the people who are watching? That's the energetic exchange, right? I've created something, somebody's looking at it, you're looking at the metrics on your marketing, the finances in your business and the numbers. That is that picture into, does everybody feel about this situation that we feel about it? And so if you're ignoring it, relationships are two-sided, right? And every exchange with a customer is a relationship. And so if you're not speaking to your spouse, you don't know how they feel, your marriage breaks down. It's the same with your customers. If you're not looking at like, okay, how is this working with them? Then it breaks down. So we have to get clarity on the situation. It's not actually even about the dollars and cents. It's not how much money is in your bank account. It's being able to use those numbers. Like, there is not a specific, like, my bank account has to say this much unless you decided that's your goal. But when you're talking to an accountant, like, what does success look like? It's actually about progress. Are we heading in the direction we're wanting to? And we're looking at relationships between things to identify, like, is this happening the way we want it to? So when you ignore that, you're almost ignoring, like, the lifeblood of your business.
Yeah.
It's like ignoring your health.
Yeah.
You just don't do it.
Oh my gosh. I like such a beautiful response, because it all has to come together. It all flows in and out of one another, every single silo of our business. But for some reason, for so many female founders, we just put finances in this like big, scary, overwhelming bucket. And the way that you just said it, oh my gosh, it resonates so deeply. So if we break this down for newer founders, how frequently should they be looking at their numbers, and which numbers specifically in that early stage?
So I would look at my numbers once a month. I think anything more than that, you're getting too like microscopic.
Yeah.
And you're starting to try to make sense of these little things that just don't really tie together. So I would look at it once a month. And we always talk about 3 pillars of profit. So there's 3 things that I think you need to pay attention to. One is revenue. One is the cost of what you're offering. So either your cost of the product you're selling and what margin you're making on that, or the cost of the service, and then your overhead. So looking at how those are trending and how they play together to make profit. And then from there, I think it's important that you yourself know what drives profitability in your business, and you start getting more microscopic on those specific factors. So for example, If you're in a service-based business, you might actually want to dive into specific product lines that are your like hero lines. You're like, okay, this is our core service. How do we deliver this really well? Or our advertising, we're doing a lot of advertising right now. What's our return on our marketing spend? And you have to understand what's moving the needle based on what your goal is. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then how much time needs to pass for you to have enough data to say, okay, this is what's driving. So let's just say ads, for example, is what's driving most sales. When do you start to focus more in on that and eliminate some of the things that aren't working as well? Or do you continue testing? Like, is there a timeline that you look at?
Yeah, well, and that's, I think, where business gets fun because everybody's going to have an opinion. So I could say something as an accountant and the next person's like, I wouldn't look at that. And, Alex Hermosi is going to tell you something and Jenna Kutcher is going to tell you something different. And the reason is that every business is so unique. And this is where it kind of comes back to the intuition piece where I said that it's not just numbers. Sometimes there's energy behind it because what we know from some of the greatest business moguls that ever existed was that consistency leads to results, right? You have to stick with something long enough. And there are other times where it's like people have stuck with things way too long and drained all their resources. So what I think is more important is going back and understanding before you start something like, okay, this is going to be a test because most things in business are a test, right?
Yeah.
But you go into business and you have to understand how long can I afford to test this? And there was another analogy that has stuck with me for years, but it was about blackjack players and when they were card counters. And the way that they bet is that they never leave themselves with zero. And so when we're going into business, I think more so what's important is making a bet and not leaving yourself so dry by the end of it that you have nothing to bounce back with. Right. So, for example, if you want to try ads and you have X dollars in your account, you're taking a portion of that and you're saying, okay, I can do ads. Then you're asking the expert. So maybe it's yourself, maybe it's somebody you're hiring, but you're like, how many months can I afford this? With the cash that I have, how can I afford this for how long? And then asking them like, do you think we can get results within that time frame? Right. So if they're like, ooh, yeah, but just like you've only got 3 months worth and like we're probably only going to start getting traction at 3 months. We have to do this visibility campaign and all these other things first. Then you're like, wow, that doesn't leave me a lot of wiggle room. That doesn't feel good to me. So maybe I'm going to do some organic content first. It's going to, cost less. I can afford to do it for this long. And so that's where some of that gut response comes back. But it also ties together with looking at numbers and cash flow and saying, okay, I'm not betting it all because I want to be able to try something else if that doesn't work. And leave myself like, also just nervous system wise, if you're like, I'm betting it all on black the whole time, you're like hanging on to the roller coaster, like, hopefully I get off this ride. And that's not good because we don't show up well that way.
Yes, we don't. It's usually when shit hits the fan or ignoring your intuition where the ad strategist tells you that they're going to make you $100,000 during Cyber Month when intuitively we know it's the most expensive time of the year to bet on ads. You need a runway strategy. And so, I love how you tie it in together. Like this for me is the golden ticket because especially as female founders, we are so intuitive if we allow ourselves to be. If we give ourselves enough time and space to really tune in, like our intuition yells at us. And it's decisions like that where, we will be sold the moon, but we are so grounded in the long game and the long-term strategy that no one's going to mess with our foundation.
I have to tell you one thing, especially about hiring, I would say like in the marketing field specifically that I deal with. And so a lot of times we're hearing messages and there are some incredible marketers and they will work based even on commission because they're like, we know we're going to get results, right? Now, a lot of people don't do that. The ones who work that way, it's like they're out of your startup budget. But the thing is as founders, like we are not asking enough questions and we are not holding people accountable because somebody in that industry has seen somebody else like be like, oh, we need 3 months or 4 months before we start getting results. So we're just like, we're going to let them off the hook for 4 months. And then month 5, it's like mediocre. And we're like, hey, you said month 4, and there's another excuse. But we are not here to be mediocre. There's nobody in small business that's like, I'm okay just being, mediocre for the rest of our lives. Like, no, we want to stand out. We want to change people's lives. And if you have that kind of mission on your heart, then you need to make sure everybody working for you does also. Now, there is a balance because these people are experts. They've got advice. So we can come at it with questions and looking to work collaboratively. But we need to hold people to higher standards because otherwise, this is why businesses fail. We run out of cash because we've spent it on mediocre results and not got the return on it.
And I think the reason why we don't ask those questions is because, again, quote unquote, they're the expert. They know more, right? We outsource our life to our accountants, to our digital marketers, to our copywriters, because that's not our zone of genius. But I think this is a huge point and something that every founder needs to take ownership of, again, to not burn through cash. Because there is a lot of this happening in the marketplace. So discernment, asking the right questions, and then obviously following our intuition. So if we go back to that initial question, so for seasoned founders now in growth mode, how does that shift? What numbers should they be paying attention to? Or is it the same numbers? Like, is there a shift that happens?
Yeah, so those pillars of profit, they're the foundation of what you're doing, right? And what happens as you grow and scale is you need to start getting more granular on each of the numbers and how they support your business. So if I was a seasoned founder versus a startup, it's just how zoomed in on certain numbers I'm getting. Because you start looking at each individual one and each individual number and you're like, how does this play into the bigger picture? Right. What is my return on investment? So now instead of just being like, oh, I hope to make profit, we're like, I'm now hoping to make X number of dollars of profit. And now I want to systematize to make even more. And so you're just getting more granular. So for example, early on, we're like, okay, did we make profit or not? And then later on, I might be like, okay, how does every one of my software systems support the business? How does it get a really great return on investment? And is there something better that I could use? How efficient is my team in delivering this service? Starting to look at it maybe by customer. Are we more profitable on one customer than another, or by a certain product line? Whereas early on, it takes so much time and energy to do that. But because early on, you're really taking a look at what works, what doesn't, and you're reiterating so often, you can't get granular like that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It goes back to that consistency of data and having the information to then be able to zoom more in. So if we move into desire meets data, so we're heading into Cyber Month, which for both product business and online businesses, this is the time of the year that we set big goals for. Can you walk us through how to set those big and exciting rev goals from a place of desire? So following that, this is what I desire for this season, but then also break those numbers down so that we're able to take the action that meets the goal, that meets the desire.
Yeah, so I think this is interesting because I don't ever walk into Cyber Month expecting anything different than I set earlier in the year. Does that make sense? Usually I'm not setting the goal in September because we actually looked at it as a part of our entire year plan. Yeah. So number one is we likely have some sort of overhead we have to cover. So we should already know at a minimum we're doing X dollars of sales. Yeah. But that's where you start learning your industry and deciding what does this mean for this particular time of year and this particular month. Maybe for seasoned business owners, they know some of their growth patterns, the seasonality of their business. But the reason that I'm not particular about this is that there's businesses that don't like to offer discounts this time of year. They're so against it, and they still manage to kill it. Or they're looking early in the year. Their patterns early in the year is they sell really well in March and April, and they've got a 12-month commitment. Yeah. But if I was just focused on okay, I have maybe a product-based business, I know this is the time of year, I'm looking at a few things. One, what can I deliver on, right? And going back to how we bet, I don't want to bet it all on November, December, because we've seen a lot of changes in the industry where some years are great and some aren't. And so I would be creating offers that I am maybe selling off old product and old inventory, like bundling it in to create a really great offer for somebody. So trying to move some of that cash and recollect some of the cash that we've already expended. I would also be looking at what is something I know I can deliver quickly. Like, let's say something went, drastically better than you expected. How can I move on this quickly? Do I have a long lead time on this product? Is it something I can, or if it's a service, can you book it further out? So a lot of, for example, like med spas, they do this with gift cards instead of like actually booking services. Right. And so I'm like pre-selling people to try to capture those sales at the time where they're ready to buy. I'm looking at this year in particular, there's a lot of messages about like over consumerism and things like that. So I'm like, how can I sell into the narrative that like you're already going to be buying this, so why not buy it now and like put a pretty bow on it? Does that make sense? Like, I'm even thinking of like the mint cleaning girls. I'm like, I really want some cleaning products for my husband for Christmas. So like, how can I like frame this of like, now it's acceptable for a woman to get cleaning products, but because you want it and it brings joy, right? So those are the types of things that I would be looking at as I head into those months. And then the goals are kind of this dance between what feels like a push, what excites me. So what am I going to push myself to talk about more than I normally would? Right? So if you're the type of person who, when you're selling, and remembering that selling is really just serving, but when you're selling, you're like, I like to talk about this like one time, and if it doesn't sell, I'm done. Then maybe we're setting the goal to, like, well, what would it look like to double that so that I'm pushing myself to talk about it 3 or 4 times? Because I know that my comfort zone isn't there. But it's not so far that I'm like shut down now and deciding like this is not good for me. So balancing some things like we talked about overhead. What do we know our minimum is? How do we go beyond that? How do we push ourselves? And having to listen a lot to the gut of how are we not shutting ourselves down in those goals? Just because somebody else is having a certain figure, Black Friday doesn't mean we have to do that. We don't have to play that game.
It's so fascinating you say that, because I'm really in the cyber world space simply because my husband does own a digital marketing agency for 8 years now, and every single one of his product-based Canadian brand clients is prepping for this huge month. It's something that they're accustomed to. Now, you said 2 key points here. One is anyone who's a seasoned founder, they've already planned for Cyber Month at the beginning of the year. I think that's key, because reactive strategy is the worst strategy. So more newer founders, possibly if you're listening, like, did you plan for this months ago? Are you going to be reacting to what your competitors, to what your social media, to what you're seeing? Because that is not the strategy to bet on.
Okay, and I have to add too, so for early stage founders, what I would be scared about if they haven't planned for this is that they cannibalize their sales. So they come at it and they're like, holy smokes, I see all these people selling. I now need to sell this. I'm going to put this on for a discount. And it's like, people were going to buy from you regular price in January. And now you're trying to force the sale in November at a discount. And so they cannibalize those offers because they didn't really plan for it and look at how does this fit. They're making less profit because they're trying to play that game.
Less profit. I think you said something really key is getting really creative and seeing, okay, what are your lowest sellers and how can you bundle them and really move that inventory through so that you're starting the new year maybe more focused in on your best sellers if you're product based. So I think that's really, really amazing advice.
Yeah, and like also looking at, selling the kits, and the discount is on the kit because your margin is typically better on the accessories, right? Like you make a better margin than maybe your hero product. And so you're looking at like, how can I do this? And we can discount it. We can lose a bit of margin on that through November to hook customers that we didn't already have, right? Somebody who wants to try this as something new. What worries me though is like what we're seeing in a lot of industries is return on ad spend just isn't there right now. So if you're not getting the return on ad spend, so you're not actually getting new eyeballs and you're only selling to your existing customers,
They're
don't
buying at a
necessarily
discount.
want to sell at a discount.
Yeah, exactly. And also tied to that in terms of strategy is like you cannot just start running ads in this season. It's not going to work. You need that runway and you want the new eyeballs. You want those new leads. So I think that's so important to note here. So if we chat next profitability, because yes, there's revenue, but profitability for business owners, for founders, is really what equals freedom in the long run. Like it's really why we start businesses. It's eventually how we can start paying ourselves. So actually, I want to ask about profitability and paying ourselves as founders. Like obviously product-based business, it might take longer. The margins are different than if you have a business in the online space where your expenses are quite low. So let's talk about profitability and then let's talking about paying ourselves as founders.
Yeah. So this is where I think there's some like controversy where it should just, you hear that you should just focus on revenue and just gaining the customer. And there's like, maybe 20% validity in that, because if nobody's willing to buy, then you don't have a customer. But if you're not making profit off of it, I'm like, you're literally paying to do the work.
Yeah, you don't have a business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going back to the pillars of profit. So we've got revenue, we have cost of sales, and we have overhead. And you need to then build in profit over and above that, right? So if you're looking at like a minimum of a 10% profit margin, what I suggest for early stage founders is that they actually build out that profit model for themselves early on to understand what it looks like. And usually what ends up missing from that. So they know like, okay, we've got these subscriptions and we pay for this cell phone and like, here's some things I'm paying for, marketing. So they've got the overhead. They sometimes there's a dance for product-based business, especially for like somebody who's making something. They may not know their margin clearly, but understanding your margin, like what does that product cost you, the one that you're selling, and the perspective often missing there too is like the discounts, because they think like, oh, I bought this shirt for this much and I sell it for this much, but we forget all the times that we either didn't sell it or we gave it away to an influencer or we sold this one at a discount. So like, what's your true margin? And then we've got revenue, right? We can increase prices of things, we can put things on sale, we can chase more customers. So you need to build out the profit model. But normally the one thing that's like really missing to gain clarity is people build that out without your owner pay built in. And the most critical part of this is that if you're building a business, if you look at any company that you would be willing to invest in, you and I are both angel investors, we probably invest in the stock market. Every single one of those companies, if the owner wasn't taking pay, my decision would be terrified. I would never invest in it because I'm like, this business doesn't support paying for everything. So you are not going to start there. You're highly unlikely not going to start there unless you've taken some kind of angel investing or VC funding. But for most of the founders we're talking to, bootstrapping, we're not going to be able to pay ourselves what we're worth. But we need to build into the profit model. Well, if I was paying for everything that this business needed to run, what would that need to look like? And what that does is that helps us challenge the expenses. What is the return on this investment? Do I need it? Is it providing value to the business? We're looking at the cost and the input of delivering a service. Maybe we're getting scrappy and we're using more AI. Maybe we're using, different labor in different ways, or creating systems where it now takes us less time to deliver something than what it did in the past. And then we are looking at revenue. How are we bringing in revenue? Can we upsell a client? What are the packages that are creating the most value for customers? What's the right pricing for this particular product? What's the pricing sensitivity for the customer? And so we need to understand all of that, but it needs to also bring in like, how do I get paid? And if it doesn't, we never actually set that goalpost. So we're never actually chasing that goal until you burn out. And that is the worst time to decide to set yourself a lofty goal, when you're like, I'm 3 years in, I've been expending all this startup energy and now I need to chase another goal. We need to start earlier.
Yes. I was just speaking to a founder who's 7 years in business and hasn't paid herself, and she's exhausted and she's resentful. And it's unfortunate because she's a beautiful product and it sells and she has market share, and that wasn't built in. And so I think this is a key point, is like build it in at the start. Now, what are we looking at numbers wise? Like what is reasonable? Like, of course, everyone wants to make, 100K a month, but like what numbers do you build in at the beginning?
Yeah, so I look at two things is like one, I have a role as an investor in this business where I'm doing some things that like generate long-term value.
Yep.
But there's also some very tactical things that I do in this business. And this kind of ties back into like, are you doing the things that you also should be doing as a founder, or should you be hiring those out, right? But I look at, what am I doing in a day? Doing a time audit, like when am I handling administrative tasks? When am I acting in the role of a buyer? When am I acting in the role of maybe a marketer? What would I pay that marketer otherwise? And so I look at the roles that I fill and I assign those market values. So maybe you don't need a full-time position, but if on average you could pay an admin assistant, $20 an hour, to do that task, I look at the number of hours I'm putting in and say, okay, about this, right? Like this does not have to be down to the 15 minutes. You don't need to get that granular. You just want to be in the same ballpark of what do I really think I'm doing? Because not only does it tell you what you should be paid, it also helps you clarify your role and what is going to be the first thing to let go.
Yes.
Right? Of how can I get a good, really great return on investment? Because if I can hire an admin assistant for $20 an hour and that frees me up to do the $100 an hour tasks that need my attention that I'm not getting to, then I will very quickly do that.
Yes, I think we need to say that again, because it's like there's so many early stage founders are so scared to start investing out because of money, of cash flow. But we have to look at it as we're investing where our time can then go where it's more valuable as the visionary, as the CEO, as the founder of this brand, versus like holding on to every penny, because it's going to lead to burnout, just like you said before.
Well, and like also stunt growth, because when you're doing like every email and like all these administrative things that you're saying that you can do, one, you should be challenging yourself on how you can systematize these things to not do them at all. But if you're doing that, then nobody's leading the growth. Now, I do think it is a dance, and that we see that in the numbers, because we've seen people hire out too early and the business actually can't afford it. There's not enough cash flow to support everything that they've offloaded, because what they're buying back, like a Dan Martell method of buy back your time, what they're buying back isn't giving them the same reward or return on their investment as what they thought it would. Right. So they're spending, but they don't get a return because their activities that they're doing instead aren't actually leading to a result.
Okay, let's talk about this for a sec. Yes. Okay, this is really key. So again, it's like that dance, like you said, but if you've now as the founder outsourced, so you've bought back your time, what should you be more zoned in on? Because we tend to gravitate towards the things that are in our zone of genius. For me, that would look like selling, which generates revenue. But if that's not that task the founder is performing, then it doesn't, like you said, result in that return on an investment as they thought. So what should they be focused on?
And so most often what I'll say is it is selling, because selling as a founder will actually get you most often your highest return on investment. Yes. Every once in a while there's a project. Let's say like if you can systematize this, it's going to save your team X dollars, like consistently month over month. It's like, okay, that particular project I can justify. But in general, it's always the selling, because nobody can sell the way you can. Yeah. Like it is hard as an early stage founder, and even like mid stage founder, if you're not really clear on what you offer and how that converts for your customers and your clients, then it is hard to hire somebody to book for you or to book a sale for you. Yeah. And so that is most often your highest return on investment.
And it's interesting because, when I speak to 7-figure plus founders, that then also becomes usually the pain point, because yes, now they've outsourced the selling, and yet the sales team is not, they won't sell like the founder sells.
So at that stage, though, I think two things are important. One is well before you get to the point where you're hiring a selling team, I think you should actually be considering it, because then you've put in more reps well before the time where you go to hire somebody. Because if you've ever sat down, like that'd be like sitting down to write a book in a day. You're like, okay, I'm going to I'm going to write this book in a week. I'm hiring a sales team. It's like, no, you don't think of everything.
Yeah.
So if you start thinking like, yeah, maybe 12 months from now, I might hire a team. And as you're selling each time, you're like, hey, this was a key part in this conversation, and this was a key part in this conversation. Then you're going to have a really great playbook to give them.
Yes.
Right? So like you'll get better results. But then the second piece behind this is at that stage in business, it's not the same as early founders. Like early founders, we are very margin sensitive. Like we need all the dollars, right? We're in growth stage. But at the stage at scale up and you're hiring somebody to sell for you, if you have not already built in a reduced margin, knowing that somebody's probably not going to sell at the same rate that you did, and saying, okay, this still works in my business model, then you haven't done the prep work to hire that person.
Right. I love this.
Right.
Yes.
So
Yep.
yeah, you should have that built in to be like, okay, like you're also hiring another person. So, have you built that cost in, and are you looking at it? If we only had this conversion rates, like you can't hire them and be like, oh, hey, good luck converting. Like, no, we need this, or you don't have a spot on the team.
Yes. So prepare at least like 12 months before you're even ready to hire that sales team. I think this is the key. Now, okay, we're going to shift gear to taxes. And taxes are either like hot topic or cringe topic for founders. So I want to know, let's break it down again. Newer founders, what are some basic tax hacks or deductions that they might not have even considered, obviously that are legal, that are just going to blow their minds?
Okay. The only thing that I need to put the disclaimer on is like our Canadian tax system is so different than American taxes.
Okay.
And that is such a big pain point for Canadians, because obviously like just population base is so much bigger. So we see on Instagram and TikTok all the time all these tax hacks, and we constantly are like, what, I can put my kid on payroll? I'm like, no, you cannot put your kid on payroll. Like,
you
can write the dog off. No, you can't. No, there's like a lot of rules that you have to jump through, and like your children really do need to be like performing a role that you would otherwise hire.
Okay.
Otherwise it's considered income splitting. So in Canada, I think what people don't understand about taxes, if I only could tell them one thing, it's that in Canada, the entire tax system is based on connecting the dots between an expense, what you're spending money on, and how that relates to either producing income or the potential to produce income.
Okay.
So they're always looking at me and they want these headings, and some accountants like to indulge people with that. They're like, oh, we'll give you all these headings, but I'm like, I actually don't follow you around. And so I don't know what you spent money on. I don't know that you went and bought that necklace because it created this connection with somebody who then sponsored this. And like, I don't know those things, right? And then you maybe did an ad for them. Like, I don't know that about you. So it's very hard. So the number one thing is every time you're tapping the card, how or is there a connection between what I am doing now and the potential to earn income, or my hope to earn income? Because if there is, it doesn't matter what label, like we'll put a label on it for the tax return, but that's the thing that's missing. That's the thing that people are like, well, I don't know if it's a write-off or not, right? That's how we reduce
This is the
taxes.
golden question again. Okay. I love this. Repeat it again. Is this
related to income or my potential to earn income in this business?
Okay.
Right? Like, what's the intention behind what we're spending?
And if the answer is yes, then it is a write-off?
Yeah, you'll find a spot to write it off.
Okay.
Right? So the other test that I use often is if I was an investor in that business. So often it's like, again, back to angel investing. If I looked at one of my investments and they're like, I took a 7-day trip here because I like needed to reset. I'm like, every human being needs to reset. We all pay for that out of our own pocket.
Yes,
right? Like, I hope that's included in your take home pay. And so if I'm looking at my investment and I would be unhappy with them spending that money, then probably like I would have the same opinion.
Yes. Okay.
Right?
Really good. This makes it.
That's like the Canadian tax
It's
system. Because
huge.
in the States, it's like you write off your grandma's a write off, right? And in here, it's like absolutely not.
Hard no on that one.
Yeah.
Or you're done.
Yeah. So here it's all about like trying to create equality amongst everybody so that the business is writing off things that like really belong to the business with still giving it like the ability to take risks, right? So it's not like, oh, it had to earn money. It was like, no, we actually genuinely tried to make money this way, and it didn't happen. Now there's a couple other things that I would say that like people miss. And one is there any way we can tie what we're doing to SHRED, which is like scientific research and experimental development? Are we changing things? So a lot of tech entrepreneurs are eligible for some SHRED credits. So like, how have you done something? If you're developing a product that's different, like, is there any ability to apply for some of those credits? And then also, depending on your province, like working with co-op students or apprentices, like how can we hire individuals that way to maybe gain some tax credits? But the biggest one is, it goes back to just like, are we optimizing? Are we saving in taxes on everything that we're spending money on that should be a write-off?
Okay, great. And is there some programs that you've discovered that maybe not many people know about through the Canadian government that would be supportive for founders?
I wish my answer was yes.
Me too.
No, like the SHRED program would be one of them.
Okay.
And then most of the programs that are more beneficial are provincial-based programs. So they're definitely not federal. And then they pop up and they close for a while. So for example, in Alberta, we have Alberta Innovates, which is a provincial program, and they sponsor a lot of tech products and innovation, right? So each province has kind of decided like, you know, what's our mandate? What do we want to spark and promote? And then from there, there's like sometimes initiatives for women and initiatives for minorities, but there's not necessarily just like, oh, you want some, you know, advertising dollars. Like there was an initiative for a certain period of time where it's like, we want people to go digital. We want to help them adopt. And then that kind of ended. So they do these things. And then I would say like over the last few years, there's also a shift to private market doing more initiatives. So like today, I mean, we're recording in September. So like a friend of mine posted about Purolator offering $25,000 grants. So Purolator, Zensurance, like MasterCard, you know, the number of people offering and businesses who work business to business offering grants has sparked, but those don't come on an easy list. Right. Like they just pop up sort of through advertisement. And that's where I'd go back to like community is your best resource. Because that is how you stay up to date on what, you know, what's changing and what's happening. What can I be a part of?
Yeah, so true. How are you using AI right now? And specifically looking at numbers and data, do you have specific suggestions that founders should be looking at right now in terms of leveraging AI?
Yeah. So going back to what we already spoke about, I already told you what the pillars are, right? But everything is in the prompt. And so what you are wanting is a really good prompt that is acting like a specific person who's put out enough data for AI to understand who that person is, right? And at this point, there's lots of information about a CFO. Now, I think the challenge with everything in AI is that it comes down to gut. Like I've been in this for over a decade, so I have a lot of knowledge and often challenge ChatGPT. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Like, no, do better. And so the problem is with all of it is you have to be knowledgeable enough to know when it's not right or have asked enough questions. So one, create some really great prompts and really give it the perspective of like, what is the challenge? And two, use it to ask questions. If I was a CFO or I'm, you know, use an example from another, if you're a product-based business, another product-based business in your industry and say like, tell me what they're doing. Tell me what would be important to them and then bring that knowledge back to your company. So one is learning, two is prompting the right way. And then three, like if you've listened to anything on finance, if you've dove in a little bit, they've already told you some numbers that are important, right?
Yeah.
So for example, like companies with debt, you need to understand the debt in your business. Companies that hire a large workforce, you need to understand how that plays in. And so you can start using it to analyze, but you need to understand like sort of like your blueprint and then ask the right questions.
And as the expert, so what companies are you investing in? Like what numbers are you looking at specifically?
Yeah. So there's a couple things that are more important to me.
Yeah.
Is I'm not looking at red markets, I'm looking at blue markets or people who are doing things differently. Because there are a lot of businesses that are starting. So for example, I personally am no longer drinking alcohol. I see an entire movement, and you would not believe the number of investment requests that we get from alcohol brands. And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
that doesn't align personally. We see this like dry movement happening. So we're looking at like, what does the industry look like? How can you do things a little differently? I also personally don't invest, and there is big money to be made, obviously, in like things that are almost like ahead of the curve, but it's very hard. It's very easy to go wrong there, right? So like early investors in AI, like if you actually look at the numbers of how many people lost their shirts because it was just a little bit too ahead of time, or ahead of the movement, and then you're like 3 steps in and then it takes off, right? Wow. So I'm looking at somebody where it's like in an uphill, or it's like there's already some movement behind it.
Yeah.
And then it is the profitability. Like how quickly can we hit profit? Yeah. And I'm also looking at cash flow. How are they going to sustain the growth?
Yeah.
Right? So how does the cash play in? But it's about profitability, because there's a lot of businesses, like unless you have really deep pockets and the right connections, you're going to run out of cash if you can't achieve profitability quickly. Like I think of a Netflix, for example, is like, wow, Netflix did not turn a profit for a very, very long time, but it was such a lofty goal to almost like obliterate everybody else in the market that they knew when they went with it that we have to have deep pockets to get there.
Yeah.
Right. So like they go at things and they're like loss leaders and they're tackling it that way, but that was a part of the plan. Whereas most businesses who are listening to this, if you're like, oh, I'm going to be like Netflix didn't need profit, is like, absolutely not. You're missing the other 90% of the plan. Right. So those are who we're investing in.
Oh, so good. Staci, did I miss anything that you'd love to share with the listeners?
I don't think there was anything specifically that's missed. If you haven't already got this from the episode, it's just that numbers can be so unique. And I think that there is a huge opportunity to use AI if you're not at the stage yet where you can invest in a professional to help you. But it is sort of like a health journey where it's like you can get some information, and then as you start making improvements, ideally you've bought yourself enough leverage to then go in and get more specific to you knowledge. Right? So you start with like, okay, I need to start looking at profit, and you make some changes based on what you know. But then as you progress down the road is like, now it's time to get more granular and more specific knowledge to you, your business and your industry, and where you need to go.
How quickly do you think a founder should bring in at least like a fractional CFO?
So, I guess to give some perspective on this is like at Thrive, one of my biggest passions is that we have to give people a return on investment. So if you're working with somebody too early on, maybe the advice, like they don't have the ability to like work on that or run with it, right? So if you're working with somebody too early, and then so we're also very much focused on how do we provide that return on investment. If you're going to pay me for an hour of my time, how do I get you a result that you're going to get, 3x, 5x, 10x that? So not everybody is created equal, but at Thrive, like you can buy half an hour of our time for $175, and I've never had somebody not get a return on investment. So if I answer that based on that, I'm like, you should be hiring somebody day one, like even just to look at your financial blueprint. I'm not saying it's every month, but like, why wouldn't you hire somebody for an hour to get that perspective? There's other CFOs that are like, $3,000 a month. So you have to understand your investment and who you're working with.
Yeah.
But I think if you don't invest early on, then you it's a slower growth path.
It is. It really is. Oh, such a good conversation. Okay, I have 3 final questions for you, Staci. So the first one is your future self 20 years from today. What message is she sharing with you now?
I am so freaking proud of you. That's what it is.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. Your legacy as a parent. So this obviously is a deep and meaningful role that you hold. You have your girls. What is one truth you hope they carry in their hearts because of the way you lived, because of the way that you showed up every single day?
For me, the legacy is actually about community. So at Thrive, like we bring a lot of community in, but one of the things that accounting, we haven't really talked about this, but me to have the ability to do is like buy Love Powered Co. and which connects us, right? And it's like we have impact on the community, and that is something that's so important because when we're talking numbers and customers and like all these things, sometimes it can become impersonal, but it's actually about changing the way that we do things for the world and leaving the world a better place, right? Every room's better off for us having been in it. So what does business and life and every decision we make, like how are we impacting those around us, ourselves, and like leaving the world better?
Oh, so beautiful. And what is your definition of prosperity?
Prosperity, it's so funny because you're probably like, oh my gosh, it's a number thing. It is totally not. It's energetics. Because for me, money is security. So there is a money aspect, but it's about how I get to show up every day, how free I am to play with life, to be with my kids, to play in business, to take opportunities and risks and bounce back from them. And how does prosperity is being able to show up through all of that with joy.
Yes.
Instead of scarcity. Yeah.
So beautiful. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah. So of course, Love Powered Co. is Love Powered Co. on Instagram and all of the platforms. But Thrive Accounting is Thrive Accounting on Instagram, and Staci.Millard is where I show up most often.
I love that. And your podcast.
And I can't wait to have you on Small Business School. Yeah. So we'll be recording on Small Business School right away. And so we're doing all the things.
I love that. Make sure you guys check out Staci's podcast and all her links and socials, and obviously her website. Also, thank you so much for all of your wisdom. I was so nervous with this episode. You know me, I am always like numbers freaking out, but I understand the importance. And I feel like the way that you shared all of your wisdom and your golden nuggets has really, really resonated. And I know it'll resonate with the audience. So make sure if you're tuning in, you let us know what landed for you. And again, thank you so much for your time and for being here. Thanks for joining me on today's episode of the Prosperity Playground podcast. If this conversation sparked something in you, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts so you never miss your weekly activation. If you enjoyed the conversation, please rate and review. Your feedback helps us reach more souls just like you who are ready to calibrate to their most prosperous life. Know someone who needs this frequency boost? Share the episode to Instagram and tag me at _Anna Lozano so we can grow our energetically aligned community together. And please remember, true prosperity is about alignment, freedom, expansion, and embodying your worth. Start today. I'm Anna Lozano, and this is the Prosperity Playground. See you on the next activation.